Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. I am your host, Ben Crossman, and welcome into the longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. I hope all of you are having a great day as we get things kicked off here with another wonderful show. And for you longtime listeners, and actually, this is one of our more popular segments because I don't know if there's something about I'm sorry. I about 5 minutes before the show time, I choked on some watermelon. I kid you not, and it still hurts. But we are struggling through. But what I was gonna say was that I don't know what it is about Linux fans, but either there's a dearth of viable content out there for you, or you are just fanatic about Linux and you love everything about it. But our Linux shows are one of our more popular shows because, well, you Linux fans, you are very passionate about what you do. So, with that being said, here at Computer America, we have our all Linux show, Cooking with Linux, Marcel Gagne. He runs a great, he has his own video section on YouTube. He has his own website. He does his own kind of lessons if you want to learn how to use Linux. He makes it very approachable. Check it out. But he's joining us here for the full hour. So, before we get to him, a couple things, including computeramerica.com. There, we will have the complete show notes for today's show. And that will have all the links. Marcel put a lot of work into this for links to his Flipboard, links to his YouTube, links to his website, as well as everything that we are going to be talking about here today. You can find it in one place. So if you're driving, if you are just otherwise occupied, well, just head on over to computeramerica.com and we have everything right there for you. And while you're there, check out the social media contest. We'll be giving away a new prize here, I believe, tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow. And we will be reading their name live on the air. And hey, we could be reading your name. And the last thing is, of course, the live video stream where you can see myself, not be able to see Marcel, although we'll put him up, if he turns his camera on, you'll be able to see him. Completely up to him. I know I kind of said before no and then yes. I know I'm flip-flopping, but it is up to his whims. Oh, and there he is. So with that being said, we are going to kind of jump into this. So Marcel Gagne, as I said before, longtime Linux correspondent now and all-around great guy to talk to. Marcel, how are you doing?
I think I'm doing fine.
That is what we like to hear.
I thought when you took a look at me earlier, it's like, man, that dude just looks terrible. I don't want him on camera today. So
and like in a lot of cases, guests come on and they're like, we have cameras, and but it really doesn't add too much. But they're sitting there in their do people still wear those nightgown things? Do people still wear those things? Lately jean jackets and yeah.
Jean jackets. I love jean jackets.
But
side story. Okay, this has nothing to do with the show.
Absolutely.
But for months now, and of course it happened just as we were getting into summer. But for months now, I've been thinking, I want I would just love to have an old Levi's jean jacket of the type that I had when I was a teenager. I literally want an old jean jacket, like the old style, from 35 years ago, that sort of thing. Anyway, so I decided to, so I was telling my wife about this and she said, well, why don't you just go get one? And it's like, well, I've been in the stores, I looked and so forth. So we're in this mall and they have actually a Levi's outlet store near where I am. So I walked in there and I said, I've been in here before. I was in here a couple of years ago and you didn't have it. I'm looking for, I want like an old, Levi's jean jacket, she said, you mean like the classic? And that's actually what it's called. It's called the Levi's Classic. And it's like, I don't know. Let's have a look at it. And there it was. It was the jean jacket that I wore all those years ago.
As with most things in fashion, what goes around comes around, and
Yeah, and it's like when I was young, we worried about being destroyed in a nuclear war, and you get to worry about it too. Yeah, nowadays.
Absolutely. And of course, we're not going to talk about North Korea. I promise. We are here to talk about Linux. And by association,
you got to laugh about these things. Oh, there's a duck swimming in my pool, an actual duck swimming in the pool.
Well, see, breaking news. This is what you get here. But with that being said, we're not here to talk about North Korea or ducks or jean jackets. We are here to talk about Linux and cooking with Linux, why it's called Cooking with Linux. And, Marcel, you do something new every single month. So let's get into this. And I think a good place to start would be a quick overview and, of course, your wine.
Oh, all right. What's the overview? I forget. Okay, the
Cooking with
wine.
Linux.
Listen.
Oh, good.
So I like to drink wine on the show. It's because I'm shy, and retiring, and all those things that go along with not being able to talk in public, that sort of thing. Anyway, you know that about me. Anyway, so I like to have a glass of wine, so I can loosen up before the show. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but I do like to talk about wine because, of course, it goes back to my the column I used to have in Linux Journal, Cooking with Linux, where I had a featured wine every time. So I like to do that on the show here as well. Right. And today I am drinking a Castillo di Almanza Reserva 2013 from Bodegas Piqueras, and this is a deep ruby red wine. It's actually really lovely. It's a nice drinking wine. I have this thing I like to tell people about really inexpensive wines, and typically I try to tell you about stuff which is on the cheaper side but really good. This one's a little bit more than what I normally suggest on the show. It's about $13 here in Canada, but it's a really nice wine. It's got a lot of dark cherry. It's got a nice long finish. A little bit oaky.
It lingers with you.
It does. I love this wine. I've picked it up a few times, and it's one of my current favorites. So I'm going to recommend it. So there it is again. The Castillo de Almanza. And I apologize to all the Spaniards out there if I'm completely screwing this up. I sincerely apologize, but nevertheless, I do like your wine, Spain. Very nice. Thank you.
At least you care enough to try. So, and
I care.
And I definitely like the fact that you do give the warning that this is one of your more expensive wines at $13. So,
Well, for you Americans, it's probably like $1.50 or something. I don't know. I mean,
it's cheaper than bottled water. It's great. So, with that being said, so why don't we jump into, of course, while you enjoy your wine, why don't we jump into the first one? And Linux Mint. This was. Like I've tried Linux. I've put Linux on my brother's old laptop. It's currently used for diagnostic testing on our router and stuff like that because I can't drag my whole computer up there. Linux Mint is like the only thing that I can really jump headfirst into. I'll be honest with you. Like there's a lot of other distributions out there, but Mint's one of my favorites. So I'm glad that you have it on here.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I've talked about Mint before. I haven't talked about it in quite a long time, I don't think, actually. But I decided to have another look at it recently because my parents, I set up a little notebook computer for them a while ago, and this is like about a year ago or something like that. So it's not like a brand new notebook at this point. But one of the problems that we ran into is I call it Little Red because it's a Little Red Acer notebook. And at the time, it came preloaded with Windows 10, and I thought, okay, we'll set it up as a dual boot, and of course they've never booted into Windows ever, and it was kind of like, well, you never know, you might want to take a look at it, and it's like, no, they never looked at it, they never interested in it. But something happened when they rebooted it, and it went into Windows, and they panicked, and it screwed up the bootloader on it. And so to make a long story short, it wouldn't boot up in Windows or Linux anymore because it's like, what the heck is this? This isn't what I'm used to seeing. So all of a sudden, they drop the notebook and they say, can you put Linux back on here? And, could you put the wolf back on there as well? And what they were actually telling me was they wanted KDE with Amarok, which is the music player that comes with KDE. And by the way, I love Amarok. Amarok is like one of my favorite media players of all time for, your local files. It handles streaming services as well, a bunch of streaming services as well. But I digress. Anyway, so I decided that I would just put what I had on my notebook, which was Kubuntu. And this notebook, I had done some weird stuff to the secure boot stuff, the EFHI. I'm getting this all. I always mix up the letters there. Right. But anyway, so the secure boot was had messed things up in some way. So I tried resetting it to factory settings, because I was loading up something different. And the short story is, every time I was trying to boot back up after I had installed it, and this is as with a lot of new notebooks, it doesn't have a DVD drive or a CD drive. So what I had to do was use my here. I'm reaching into my pockets here for the people who are looking at the video section. This is like my favorite USB key. It's a Lego brick.
Yeah.
See, it's a Lego brick. It's a Lego brick that actually is a 32 gig USB key. I love this thing. I love this thing because it's a Lego brick. That's the reason I love it. But anyway, so I loaded up Linux on this thing using the dd command, and maybe I should add that in the notes, because in some ways, if you're willing to go down to the shell, as opposed, there are GUI versions of apps that will burn Linux, if you'll pardon the expression. I'm still calling it burn because of a DVD, but that will put Linux on a USB key or a USB drive, and they're fine, but you go through a whole bunch of little steps, and you have to remember whether you're formatting or not formatting. Whereas if all you did was just use dd, a single one-line command, and I'll put it in the show notes, and beat me up afterwards so I can add it, because the show notes are available online, and of course they will update automatically with my updates. So beat me up after the show so that I do this, okay?
For sure.
Thank you. Anyway, so this one-liner command, put that on there. To make a long story short, I put Kubuntu on there, and every time I rebooted it after I installed it, it kept coming up and saying that there was no media. And it's like, well, what, and then all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, it's this whole nonsense about, proprietary, bootloader technology, blah, 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 and so forth, including codecs, third-party codecs and things like that. Whereas Linux Mint doesn't actually ask you any of those things. Linux Mint just gives you all that stuff, which is why, you said it was the best for you, because everything just worked out of the box, because they just automatically assume, of course, you're going to want to use the Windows fonts. Of course, you're going to want to be able to play MP3s. Of course, you're going to, of course, of course, we're not going to ask you those stupid questions. We're just going to make it part of the distribution. All right. And for people who want a pure, I'll put pure in quotes, Linux distribution, you probably don't want to install Mint, because it does all that for you. It puts a lot of things that aren't pure. Anyway, so long story short, I knew that there was a new version of Linux Mint, so I went looking for 18.2 Sonia. I like that. It's a nice name. They have nice names on Linux Mint. But I digress. Anyway, I put it on the key. I burned it to the key, and I booted up the notebook, and it installed beautifully. First time, rebooted it. It came up clean and gorgeous. And I have to say, I had to make it my distribution focus. I had to. Not just because there was a new version out, but because it was so danged easy.
Yeah, and
just do this even with this notebook that I had botched in various unspeakable ways before, with secure boot and so forth. It just worked. It was fantastic.
Right. So, yeah. This was our kind of go-to recommendation. I'll be honest, in my brain, I haven't really updated since to kind of say that this is my first time going from Windows to Linux. What would you recommend? And my brother, if you asked him, he was all about Ubuntu. And that's what he said, and I was just said Mint, because it was closest to Windows. So, it was kind of the baby step to a wider world of Linux. In my mind.
It's the baby step, and in the open source world, and this is not, by the way, I'm not apologizing for what I'm about to say here in the least, but the open source is not just, the software. There's a whole philosophy behind it as well. Free is in freedom, and free is in freedom means that all the software that's in your distribution is, you can count on it being completely open. In other words, there's no proprietary anything unless it's specifically otherwise agreed to, okay, by the user.
Hmm.
Well, that's fine if you are someone who believes in that philosophy, who lives that philosophy, and a lot of us do in the open source world. A lot of us do. A lot of us find that this is something that's extremely important. But again, if I'm trying to, give it to somebody who is, coming from the Windows world or whatever, there's nothing that is quite as easy as Mint, and that proved itself not just in the use, in other words, somebody coming from the Windows world and trying to use it, but just installing the darn thing.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not sure how much. Well, actually, I know that you keep up with news and technology news, and what have you. And kind of branching off. Yes, this is a deviation, but Microsoft.
Deviate, baby, deviate.
Yeah, Microsoft got in trouble for proprietary and not open source, but kind of closed source for a lot of their new Surface laptops. And we just kind of did a story yesterday about how they have like a 25% failure rate, and they're pointing the finger at the fact that they aren't using anyone else's. They aren't using anyone else. I was about to say codexes. They aren't using anyone else's drivers or anything like that. They decided to make their own with the Surface laptop, and yeah, they've been wigging out, for a year or two, and they have overall a 25% failure rate. It's been a pretty big problem for them.
Well, it's something that the Linux world has been frankly, dealing with since the beginning, and Microsoft is just learning how to do this, and we're rather good at it. We've been fighting this fight for a long time, making sure that, working on the premise that yes, we are of course going to provide our own drivers for all that stuff, which isn't to say that there aren't proprietary drivers that you can get for Linux. There most certainly are, but that's not necessary. Like for instance, I have an Acer notebook here.
Hmm.
Apparently we like Acer in this house because all my notebooks at the moment are Acer. Interesting. Anyway, I have an Acer notebook here which has got a GeForce 940 MX.
Hmm.
NVIDIA card in it, and Linux comes with an open source driver that you can use for this thing. But some of the super accelerated features that are associated with the GeForce are only available if you use the proprietary driver.
Right.
Okay. So I use the proprietary driver. I make a conscious decision that yes, I actually do want those additional features, and I'm willing to, bend over in the direction of proprietary stuff to be able to do that. So
All right. Okay. Yeah. And so getting back to Linux Mint, obviously,
yes.
Do you know if they kind of try to keep the updates, because last time I used it was with Windows 7. It was pretty darn close to what it was. Like, do you know if they kind of keep it up to date? Either like, do they try to diverge in their own way, or do they try to keep it close to Windows 10 or the latest kind of?
No,
Windows
it has nothing to do with Windows 10. Actually,
No,
sorry,
okay.
it has nothing
Yeah.
to do with Windows at
Okay.
all. Absolutely diddly. I like that word, diddly.
All right, yeah, just to be clear. So, all right, perfect. So
Anyway, it has nothing to do with it. What they do is they follow to some degree. It's not 100%, but they follow to some degree the Ubuntu development cycle, because Linux Mint is actually based on the. All this stuff is Debian based to some degree, but it's built on top of the Ubuntu distributions. Okay, so at the core underneath, if you take a look at a Linux Mint distribution, you'll find that it actually feeds from the Ubuntu repositories, and for the additional stuff that makes things, friendlier, that makes it, Linux Mint branded, if you will, those specific features come from their own repositories, but at the core of it, it's still an Ubuntu distribution. So that's really what it's following. And so consequently, it tends to come out fairly regularly. I mean, there are new distributions often. So I don't know how long it's been since you've had yours, but there's an old phrase in the open source world. It's release early, release often.
Yeah, it's not that, I mean, I still have one that runs on it. It's just I haven't felt the need to update it because it's an old laptop, and I'm just kind of sticking with what I put on there years ago. So it's no real need to kind of update it. So all right, so that's
I mean, it's working. I mean, if it's working for you, excuse me, if it's working for you, then the short answer is why bother?
Exactly.
You know,
And again, it's just like a spare laptop I have that, whenever there's network connection issues, I just need something that is able to connect to the internet to kind of diagnose it, and that works beautifully. So there you have it. So, okay, Linux Mint, distribution focus, great. Not as, not as anime filled, not as security filled, or security hole filled as some of your others.
It's still very secure. Remember, at the core, this is a Linux distribution. It benefits from everything that a modern Linux distribution benefits from. Even though it's been friendly-fied. Is that a word?
Right.
Friendly-fied?
User friendly of yeah, sure, user friendly-ified. Okay, so yeah, there's that. But I was thinking of that operating system that you or the distribution that was purposely made for hacking and security threats and
yes.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that is one of the things that, and my distribution focus of the month is often has to do with the idea that people, because you can do whatever you want with Linux, you can rebuild it, you can repurpose it any way you like. They're like tons. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds. There might be thousands for all I know. Custom Linux distributions out there, which someone built or an organization built to fulfill their needs, which might not have been taken care of by whatever else they were working with. So
right. Yeah, so there you have that. And so last month, I will say that you came on the program and we talked all about emulators. They, how to run different things. And, we talked about a lot of oldies but goodies, games and things that you could otherwise not have played on really.
And specifically, we were going for Commodore.
Yes, Commodore games. And so, that was quite an interesting listen, but now you have another segment here called Emulate This, and this is for a game that you touched lightly on last time, but it seems like your son is still heavily into.
He's totally hooked on this thing. This is a game called Undertale, which is I'll be honest. I mean, I've watched him play it, but I haven't really played it myself. First of all, he's using my Steam account, so so that he's using my Steam account, so that means that I'm not actually allowed to touch the game anyway, because it would muck with his progress or whatever else he's doing in the game. So I can only watch on this one, but it's called Undertale, and it's this old 8-bit game, or which kind of blows my mind. It's 2017, and here's my 10-year-old son, who's living in the magical world of Google Now and Alexa and all these sorts of things, and he's playing this game that looks like it's from the early 80s. I mean, it's just
very pixelated. Yeah,
it's mind-boggling, but he loves it. He totally loves it. His friends love it. There is a huge I have to almost call it a cult sort of, following around it. There are Undertale videos, fan videos on YouTube all over the place. There are people who are showing their gameplay on Undertale.
And
there are people who have done Undertale music, Undertale fan stories. I mean, it's crazy.
Tell me, and this is just, personal opinion, of course, but do you think some of this has to arise from the fact that, well, Minecraft was so popular for so long, there was no emphasis on graphics there. It was all, story-driven, character development-driven, sandbox-driven. Do you think Minecraft had anything to do with this?
I think what Minecraft has demonstrated, and games like Minecraft have demonstrated, is that you don't need the fanciest graphics in the world if you can make up for it in gameplay and story. I think that has always been more important. I mean, you can have games. I just did a video where I compared a lot of. In fact, I just put it online this morning, I believe,
Hmm.
on YouTube. It's not a Linux. It's not one of my Linux things. It's one of my game videos, and I compare war games, strategy war games, and how they are all so damn similar. Like I mean, the gameplay is like the same. What they do is they change the story, the backstory around it, and the graphics. Everything is in the same place, and everything does the same thing. But what you're doing is you're building a story around it, and the story either grabs you or it doesn't. And I think that that's what's demonstrated in things like Undertale and Minecraft is, yeah, the graphics aren't the greatest, coolest thing in the world, and maybe it's all the same stuff. Maybe I'm looking at stuff, from the '80s or whatever, but
Right.
but but there's a story element. There's something there that can capture the imagination, and it doesn't matter that it's
And
not, the highest end graphics.
And it's that old saying: if I haven't seen it before, then it's new to me. So even though you may say, "Wow, this has been done to
I've
death,"
never heard that before. That is so cool.
and well, of course, there you go. It's new to you. So, but with that being said, so Undertale looks like you have. Don't forget, and this is something popular where it's not just the game itself, but then people make kind of expansions upon the game, and especially games that are easily, not necessarily easily, but kind of simple to reproduce, in the same style. So, they have like fan made Halos of like Halo 1 and things like that.
Mhm.
And this is someone's own take on, a fan made story in Undertale. So, what is this and why is your son so interested, and
Okay,
how does
so
this relate?
yeah, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Ricky G or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
something like
remember
that. You have a link in the show notes.
I do. I have a link in the show notes, so we can go and take a look at it there. Anyway, the game is called Don't Forget, and it's a fan game. And my son became really happy and my son became really sad story associated with this, and I'll explain that. But let's start with I start from sad and I'm going to make my way to happy before I make my way back to sad. But the sad is everybody is, you've heard this before, but everybody is playing Don't Forget. Everybody, and like seriously, I'm not playing it. No, everybody I know is playing. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so he says, "Can I get it on my computer?" It's like, okay, well, how much is this going to cost me? It's free, Dad. I can just download it. Okay,
Argue with
cool.
that.
All right,
Yeah.
free is good. So I go and take a look at it. Is this something on Steam? No, it isn't on Steam. It turns out that it's an exe file. It's actually a Windows executable, and of course he is running a Linux laptop because he's my son. Of course he's running a Linux laptop.
Absolutely.
In fact, my 10-year-old son does live streams using OBS, one of a package you and I both love dearly, Open
Right.
Broadcaster. He does live streams, YouTube live streams of his gameplay on his Linux notebook. He's 10, okay? He just turned 10 like a month ago.
He has got it on lock. Good to hear.
I love that guy. I do. Well, not just because he's my son, but I love him for a lot of other reasons as well. Anyway, I digress. So he wanted to play this game, Don't Forget. And it's a Windows game. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, you don't have Windows on there. I said, you can't play it on there because you don't have Windows. Isn't there some way I can play it? And it's like, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, there is. And there is a package in Linux, which has existed for a long time, by the way. It's been around for a long time. It is perpetually under development. It hasn't always been as good as it is, but after years, it actually covers a lot of software and does it really, really well. And it's called Wine.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about Wine is Wine, W-I-N-E, which, hey, there's another reason I like that name. Wine actually stands for Wine is not an emulator.
Recursive.
Okay, so I suppose by putting it under the emulate this banner, I've totally screwed up here. Okay, but wine is not an emulator. Wine is not an emulator. It's a drink. Oh, by
Right.
the way, people say that alcohol is not a solution. It's the problem. It's not a solution. That's not true. Alcohol is in fact a solution. Go check your chemistry.
Wow, that was wait. I was time for this. I was time for this. Where is it? Here it is. There we go. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
That was down there, but I found it. We're good.
It was down there. Damn it, I knew it's down here somewhere. Anyway, so I loaded Wine on his notebook. Okay,
Hmm.
and I wondered whether I was going to have to do a lot of configuration because wine's interesting because what it does is it recreates the API. It is not actually a Windows emulator. It actually recreates all of the DLLs and all of the APIs and all of the calls so that you can run a program, which is a Windows program, under Linux. Okay,
Hmm.
so it's actually not an emulator in that sense because everything is essentially being intercepted and recreated on the Linux desktop.
I got you.
Okay.
So, right, and I think that's a good place to kind of stop
Oh,
because the
all right.
music means we have to take a break here for Computer America, and we will be right back with Marcel Gagne with, more talking about wine and emulators, and hey, if you run Linux, that doesn't mean you can't run Windows as well. So, here we go. Computer America, be right back.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here with Marcel Gagne, Cooking with Linux, and our All Linux show here on Computer America, where we focus on Linux distributions, we focus on, and we focus on lots and lots of Linux-oriented topics because, it's Linux is very versatile and you can do a lot of things, including things that, even though it's not made for Linux, you can still run it on Linux. So here we have it. Marcel Gagne joining us once again. And so talk about, again, we were just kind of getting into wine, what it is, and how it helped you play Don't Forget.
Well, as I was pointing out, there are, as you know, a lot of different versions of Windows at this point, and Wine actually has a. So you can download Wine from winehq.org. I have the link in the show notes, obviously, and interestingly enough, for the people who are interested, I have the Don't Forget. Oops, I actually wrote Undertale download. It's a Don't Forget download. So I'll fix that, while I'm chatting here. Anyway, the different versions of Windows, of course, can make that a bit of a problem. And how Wine does this is there's a program called Wine CFG, as in Wine Configure. And you can configure it to be a Windows 95 PC, a Windows 7 PC, a Windows 98 PC, Windows NT, etc., etc., etc. And it can create different environments for each one. I think I'm not sure what the default is. I didn't bother checking it at this moment, and of course because the DLLs are updated, all this other all these things, and it wants to make sure that it creates an environment that the application is going to be able to run in. And of course, if the application was designed to run on Windows 7 and above, and you've created a Windows 95 environment, it's not going to work as well for it. Okay, so there's that, and of course, Wine also lets the Wine configuration program also lets you install things like the Windows fonts and all these other things which you can install externally. It'll allow you to install a whole bunch of packages like a .NET, for instance, which it will download directly from the Windows site because .NET is not included with it. So these add-on packages that wouldn't be part of the standard Windows distribution are something that it can pull out from the internet. So of course I thought, well, this may take me a long time. So I actually told them that. I said, this may take me a while. But on a lark, I decided to just see how easily I could pull this off by just typing wine space the executable name. Don't forget blah, 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 .exe.
Right.
And lo and behold, the darn thing just worked. So it just worked out of the box. I mean, the music was there, the game was there, He switched to you could switch to the full screen graphics. Everything worked perfectly right out of the box without me having to do any kind of configuration whatsoever. So this is one of those times where not only was I able to do it, but I was able to do it without really doing much work at all. So he's sitting there going, "All right, well, call me when you got it working." Oh, I have it working. It was kind of that quick. It was kind of awesome, actually. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, I am a superhero.
Right. Yeah. You just kind of stay up and say, my work here is done. I have done all
There
I
you go.
can.
Oh, when I said a long time, I meant a long time in my world.
Absolutely. So
Anyway.
so you got it working, and he was able to play it, and it worked with all of his other, and I know we're going to talk about OBS and things like that in a moment.
Yep.
But it worked with like everything else, just kind of worked with it.
Yeah. And in fact, he did some streaming of Don't Forget using OBS, and OBS was running under Linux. So he actually did a video of, like an online video stream of him playing this game, which is, a Windows game on his Linux notebook. So it was really kind of cool. I quite like that. The reason I say there's a sad end to this story, there's a sad end.
Oh.
Because these are people who chat with this on, they all sit there and exchange stuff. And it's like, oh, you can do this and you can do that and all that sort of stuff. And there's this community that, that bounces things around. Well, one of his friends said there's something called dirty hacker mode in the game.
Goodness.
Okay. Dirty hacker mode, which lets you try, different things in the background, which are in development and so on. Well, the creator of the game is actually quite harsh about this. He's the one who put dirty hacker mode in it. But what he said is you can't go back to the way it was before. In other words, you can't, if you want to turn off dirty hacker mode to play the game in its normal fashion, then you have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to reset the whole game. And my son was like at level 17 of 18 levels on this game. And his friend said, "Oh, you got to turn on dirty hacker mode because it's really, really awesome." And of course, so despite the fact that this was all so wonderful and we had a couple of days of great fun and so on, and when you turn on dirty hacker mode, it actually comes up and says, "I'm warning you, if you do this, you won't be able to go back." But apparently he read it the same way that people read the end user license agreements. When people say that, it's like, "Did you read the license?" And they said, "Yes." It said, "Okay." And I clicked it.
Instead of actually imparting useful information, it turns into a game of reflexes on how fast you can click OK to get this out of the way.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. Nobody ever reads that stuff, which to me, okay, I'm digressing a little tiny bit here. To me, means that, oh, by the way, he was very disappointed in that. That's kind of the end of that story.
Okay.
But to me, the licensing agreements on these things, it almost, I don't know if this has been tried in court or whatever, if it's one of those things that's been challenged in court, but the very fact that no one expects people to actually read this stuff means to me that the license is probably not particularly valuable from a legal standpoint. I'm very curious about this. I don't know if it's been.
I mean, like I've heard of weird cases. I have a website to share with everyone if you want to check it out in a moment. But I've heard of weird things where, hidden in the end user license agreement, I've heard people saying, by agreeing to use the software, you agree to give us your firstborn son. And no one ever caught that after thousands of uses. So they were due thousands of babies. There was an instance of someone actually hiding a giveaway. It was like, read this, call this number or send an email and we'll give you $500. And that prize went unclaimed for like 18 months. I've heard of this and I've never seen one truly hold up in court because, they're not really legible. Yes, they're words, but they're legalese.
Well, they're not legible. They're not legible, certainly not to the average person. I mean, they're dense as hell. And really it's like I bought, especially for stuff that you bought. It's like I bought the software, I just want to play the game now, or I just want to, use the app or whatever it happens to be. Like what is all this crap here for? And of course, sometimes it's not even at the beginning. It's like, there's a help file, which is the license agreement is in the help file. Oh, by the way, I know you're already using this thing. I know you've already been using it for the last 6 months or 8 months or whatever, but there's a file here that you should go and read at some point because it's actually licensed. Like, yeah,
And
sure,
then they
that's
can
actually
change
going to
it.
happen.
And then they can change
So,
it whenever they feel the need to.
yeah, so I personally think that there's little or no value in those things. And I really do wonder, if push came to shove, just how many of them would actually ever hold up in a court of law.
So what I wanted to share with everyone was a website that we covered here on the show before. It's been about a year or so since we talked about it. But if you are really concerned with what we're talking about, feel free to check out tosdr.org, which is Terms of Service, TOS didn't read.org or TOSDR. And that is a website, and they even have like a browser add-on so that whenever you go to a product or service that they have reviewed, you can, kind of see it, and it breaks down into essentially bullet points into, either a red X, meaning this is bad, a thumbs down, which means, some people may object, and
Nice. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, and a green thumb, that means this is good for the consumer. And they kind of break everything down into, more easily digestible points that you can kind of look at a glance and go, maybe I won't agree with YouTube, and them being able to remove my content at any time without telling me at all. Things like that.
Yeah, this is really cool. Actually, it's fascinating the number of thumbs down. It's like
There's a
Amazon,
lot.
bunch of thumbs down, Apple, bunch of thumbs down, Google, bunch of thumbs down.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot more services with thumbs down and red X's than there are with thumbs up. But
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. Thank you. Thank you. I did not know about this.
Yeah, feel free to check it out. Anyone out there who is curious about those end user license agreements but don't want to read a 40-page legal document, it's not as fun. So there you have it. But again, digressing. So Undertale, your son was able to play it. Now he gets to do a very fun speed run throughout, through the 17 levels to reach the 18th level. And yeah, there you have it.
Actually, as it turns out, he was so upset that he didn't go back to it.
Oh. He'll be back.
Basically said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going through this again. Like, if you're going to put a mode like this in the game, and I kind of agree with him, it doesn't matter how many times unless you do something like, you can't go back if you do this. Okay, you don't read it. If you're going to lock somebody out of their progress, okay, there should be something like, are you really, really sure about this? Because and then have it flash in their faces. It's like, and then after they agree to that, when you come back and you say, okay, I know that you agreed to this, and that this is the second time you've already clicked this, but we're going to go over this again here so that you fully understand what's happening. And if the creator is forced to put like 15 warnings before you actually get into your dirty hacker mode, then perhaps there should be something that allows the user to go back without pain and suffering.
I think it's more the way that he learned of dirty hacker mode, because maybe the way that you kind of learned about it in the first place by usual means is talking with a developer or going to a forum. There are that many warnings. Your son got it from his friend who's like, hey, check this out. His friend gave no warning. It was just, hey, dude, check this out. This is going to be great. And bing, bing, boom, there he is.
Yeah. They're still friends, by the way. I just want to point that out.
Okay. I'm just saying, blame him. But while we are making rivalries between friends, why don't we move on to this next topic here? And this is one that I'm actually pretty well versed in as well, by chance. And I did notice this. I just updated yesterday because I'm putting it off because of the show and things like that. But no, the update went flawlessly, and OBS. You have it in here.
Yeah. I mean, again, you and I both kind of love OBS. We've been using it for a while. I think I'm the one who told you about it originally, aren't
I? No, I actually heard about it.
No,
You were the one who got me to switch from. I was paying a monthly fee. I know I was paying for software from XSplit to OBS. You were finally the one that made me push over, but I had heard about it. Yeah, exactly. He's doing his happy dance. But yes. Yes, OBS
All
is
right,
great
so
stuff.
OBS has a new version, and I mean, you could. I'm going to suggest that you go and take a look. I didn't actually know, believe it or not, that there was a changelog because I actually I have the Git repository on my I mirror the Git repository on my notebook, and every once in a while I update it anyway. So I've been getting the updates as I go along without actually knowing that there was a major update, and then I put it on, like I said, my son's got it on his PC as well. He doesn't have the Git version, and somewhere I got wind that there was a new version. I went and take a look at it, and it's there's some neat things in there. Like for instance, that you can move you can manipulate and change the interface around. For things that that work better for you. There's new theming. There's better support for certain types of streaming. All in all, I mean, it's all good. Like
Yeah.
all of it is good. Um, the uh, and and all of it makes doing a show using open broadcaster just that much better. This is actually considered a fairly major update, despite the fact that the interface isn't going to totally throw you. I mean, it does look a little bit different. I went and took a look at the version that's on my son's PC and the version that I've got, and it does look a little bit different, but not so much that it's going to totally throw you. But
The
it's well
yeah.
worth the update. So I
Yeah,
just wanted to mention it because we have spent time on this software on this show. So
definitely. Yeah, the only true kind of difference I saw, kind of right out the gate, I haven't really poked around and see what other cool things I could do, but the only real major update was that next to each source, before you could just kind of, either turn it on or off, and now you can actually lock elements on your screen so that if you accidentally, tend to move things around as you are placing new elements, by locking them, they become untargetable, unclickable, non-selectable, and it helps without messing everything up when you're trying to
especially when
work. Yeah.
especially when you happen to be online and you're it's like, oh
Right.
crap.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to mess with that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was a great update.
We are live.
Went flawlessly, and yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up because it is update 20 and it works well. It still works well. So, right. Good
Now
to bring it up.
OBS excuse me. Got the frog in my throat there. I ate a frog this morning and it didn't go down properly. Never mind. Anyway,
Oh,
Open Broadcaster.
There we go.
I do a
I got
lot.
you. Go ahead.
For my cooking with Linux videos, I use Open Broadcaster for that, and I haven't posted it yet, but we're going to go into a second one here just to explain something, but it's a big tool. It's a big tool with lots of fancy things, and sometimes if all you want to do is a quick record of what's happening on your desktop, it might seem like a little bit of overkill to use something like Open Broadcaster. I'm so used to it now that I don't actually think much about the idea that it is possibly a little bit overkill.
Right.
But if all you want to do is record the action on your desktop, and as you know, I work as a computer consultant as well. So every once in a while, I'm trying to explain to a customer how it is that you do this or how it is that you do that. And I find that the easiest thing, rather than going through a huge explanation or trying to write a document for them that they're never going to read, is I make a little video for them, which I then post to YouTube with an unlisted link so that nobody else knows about it, and of course it doesn't show up in the searches. But and I say go and watch this video. It'll show you what it is that you need to do. So I create little videos like that for them. And for lately, I've been using Open Broadcaster just because, again, I'm used to it.
Right.
But then I ran across Green Recorder, which I'd seen in the past, and by in the past I mean a long time ago. And I wasn't particularly impressed with what it was. And there's a brand new version out, and it's at 3.0 now, and it's like, holy cow, it's at 3.0. I mean, I'm thinking back to the days of 0.7 or something like this, and we're at 3.0. It's worth taking another look at it. And I'm happy to report that this is a really nice, really easy screen recorder for Linux. Lets you record video, audio. You can do the showing the mouse if you want.
Hmm.
You can adjust the frame output. You can decide what your audio sources are. It handles a whole pile of different video formats, so you can decide, MKV, MP4, OGG, whatever format you happen to feel comfortable with. And like I said, it just sort of works. You fire it up, it drops down into the status bar in the bottom right hand corner of your screen there, and when you're done, you just right click on that, and on the little green button that's down there's a little green R at the bottom. You right click on it and you click stop, and you've got your video file. It's just done. Now, if you want to edit it, obviously, if you want to do post-production edits or something like that, then you're going
Right.
to go into something like Caden Live, which is kind of my go-to app for doing these sorts of things. But it just works.
Yeah, no, and it's the situation that I kind of ran into as well when I have the show here and I need to kind of upload the podcast version of it, all that kind of stuff, and I was using Adobe. I actually have it right here. Adobe Premiere Pro. And yes, I think that's a little overkill for simply turning an MP4 into an MP3.
It
So
is kind of overkill, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like the difference between, okay, I have a can, I need to open it, so let me just go get the Jaws of Life and I'll have it popped open in just a second. Like, yeah, it can do it, but it may not be best suited. So
This is one of those places. This is one of those places where Linux tools are really nice and handy. There are so many tools for doing these simple things.
yeah.
That I just want to extract this and do this, and please leave me alone on everything else.
Right.
What do you use for video editing? Just because I'm going to try to recommend an open source tool for you. What do you use for video editing?
Yeah, for video editing, for audio editing, I do Audacity, and for video editing, I do Adobe Premiere. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. For video editing, and I suppose you could do it for audio editing as well. Just when you're bored and you've got some time to kill, because I know you've got like time, tons of time on your hand there.
Right.
Go to cadenlive.org, KDENLIVE.org.
Okay.
This is the video production application that I use, and again, this is one of those. Maybe I can talk you into using a fully open source application for this stuff as well. It's a I guess the term is linear video editor, but it's got lots of really cool features. I don't use anywhere near the things that you can use in it. You can do funky things, composite video, where you've got one video source over top of another video source. I started doing that with some of my videos. Some of the ones when you're playing games and they're vertical as opposed to horizontal,
Right.
and you got the black bars on the side.
Yeah.
Well, I hate that. So what I've started doing is I've started putting the video in the background, stretching the video in the background, blurring it, and having the one over top, so that you don't have those ugly black bars on the side.
Yeah, so more motion. But and by the way,
sorry.
if you're watching the video portion, we have Caden Live kind of up there. We're looking at the different features, and I'll be honest with you, this is looking almost kind of feature for feature, not really a clone, because obviously I like to think Adobe has a bit more money to throw at a development of a program, but this seems to be, again, almost feature to feature to Premiere, Pro. So yeah, a lot of the elements look the same. There's a lot of the same work areas. There's the video things. I mean, yeah, I think you just recommended, just like for Photoshop, you can use GIMP and things like that. I think you just recommended kind of the clone that people kind of sometimes do on Linux.
I love this thing. I've been following this piece of software for years, and it has grown immensely. It has grown in capabilities and features and in stability, and like I said, this is my go-to video editor. I love this thing. It handles projects. So that you can do multiple sorts of things with it. You can go back, you can save your work and pick up in the middle of of whatever it is that you are working on. It even has crash recovery, so that if disaster strikes and you're trying to just do too much, and
Yeah.
it'll remember where you were, in the last part of what you were doing. It's a beautiful piece of software, and it's completely free. So if you don't, I mean, I don't know what Adobe Premiere costs. But if you are trying to do some reasonably advanced videos, and you do, and I mean, I don't know what's available in Premiere that wouldn't be here. I can't actually speak for that. But there isn't any feature that I can think of that I haven't been able to find in this. I've had to learn some of it. Like doing the compositing stuff, which I
Yeah.
had never done before. But it's all there, all of it. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, no,
So,
it's thank you for turning me on to this. I will definitely look at it. I'll probably be sticking with Adobe Premiere just simply because I do kind of
you already paid for it too.
I already pay for it, and I do need some of the other applications that come with the Creative Cloud Suite. So I kind of already have it. So kind of one of those things. Why switch it? But no, I mean, again, I'm looking at the features, and anyone else out there who don't feel like paying, what is it, like $30 a month, $40 a month, $20 a month, I don't see any reason not to recommend this. So
it's wonderful. I mean, try it, and it is available for Windows.
Yeah,
okay?
it is.
For the people out there who think, well, the guy is recommending a Linux app, and I'm Linux curious. I'm listening to the show, I'm Linux curious, but I'm not sure whether I'm ready to do. It's available for Windows. So if you've got if you're still more comfortable running in the Windows world, this is an open source tool like Open Broadcaster that we keep talking about. That is available there.
Right, Kate.
How we doing for time?
We have about 4 minutes.
Okay, all right. Let me jump to an Android app. I know I don't usually cover Android apps, but this is one of those things that sort of ties into all the things that we've been talking about. Doing the videos and stuff like that.
Sure.
Because I'm on Google and I use Google Photos, all my videos and photos get uploaded to the cloud magically anyway. The problem with videos is videos take a while to process on the other side. So if I want to do post-production edit on a video, okay, I have to go and find myself a USB cable. I've got see, this is my little tablet. It's Samsung S2, and I have to find it. I have to find a cable, and I have to hook it up in here and plug it into my PC, and then make sure that I've got the proper file transfer protocol. Blah blah blah, and drag and drop, and it's just annoying as hell. So I was sitting there thinking, as I was fighting with the very last bunch of files, because I had a whole bunch of files. I thought, would it be nice if I could just do an rsync, over SSH like I do in the Linux world, and then of course the bells go off in my brain, and it's like, well, dude, there's probably something like that out there. And I went and found that there are actually several things like that out there. I tried about 3 or 4 of them, which were deeply unsatisfying and really freaking annoying. And I thought I was wasting my time until I ran across the one that I'm featuring today, which is called SSH Helper, or SS Helper, SSHELPER. It's kind of a strange way to put a word together. Mm-hmm. But the point is, this thing is fantastic. I've started using it. You can set up an SSH server, like a secure shell server, on your tablet, and then you just connect to it from your Linux desktop the way that I would do it, like I said, on the Linux desktop. I can use rsync. I can use SCP. I can even SSH into the tablet and do things at the command line on the tablet from my desktop without having to deal with that little tiny pop-up keyboard, that pops up on the tablet. The guy's name is Paul Lutis, I believe his last name is. Paul, hats off to you, man. I went and I gave it 5 stars in the Play Store today. I am so happy I found this thing because it lets me manipulate and move files to and from my Android tablet to my Linux desktop the way that I am used to doing things on a Linux desktop. It just works really well. Make sure that you change your server password, And what's really neat is because there's it just uses whatever the default user happens to be on your Android tablet. So, you don't have to create a user for it. You just have to, make sure that you've got a password that connects to it. Right. You don't have to have a rooted tablet. It runs the SSH server port above 1024, which is what you have to do to, unless you're using a rooted tablet. So you have to use SSH port 2222. But dang, this thing is nice. It is. I I am so pleased to have found this, and I highly recommend it for anybody who is trying to who routinely moves files to and from an Android device. Check it out.
Yeah, no, and so a link to that in the show notes. You have a picture here. I did see the review. I was going to comment that hey, look, it's like, look at the reviews on this thing. Someone gave it a great
Marcel's already reviewed it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and of course, it is available through the Android store. So,
and it's free. It's one of the it's not a there's no hidden pay me a little bit extra money to actually make all the features work. This thing is just plain free.
It's just plain free. So
I'd give this guy a couple of bucks for it. I totally would.
Absolutely. So there you go, Marcel Gagne, Cooking with Linux, all Linux show, Computer America. Marcel, what's next for you?
Well, I'm continuing to do the Cooking with Linux stuff online. If you are not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you thinking? Free Thinker at Large on YouTube. YouTube.com, Free Thinker at Large is my channel name. Make sure you subscribe. I'm on Twitter, WFTL, which stands for Writer and Free Thinker at Large, WFTL. That's also what's on my license plate, by the way, for my car, WFTL. Make sure you subscribe to it. MarcelGagne.com is my main site. If you're only interested in the Linux stuff, it's cookingwithlinux.com. Or if you just want to find out what keeps me interested in terms of what I find on the news or in Linux news, check out my Flipboard magazine, which I have linked to in the show notes as well. So
yes, you have. And the show notes can be found one last time, computeramerica.com, underneath today's show. So, Marcel, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. And everyone else, thank you for listening to Computer America. Hope you have fun, and tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great one. Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Bon appétit.
What he said.
Ten seconds.